Witnesses say child abuse has gone unchecked in Missouri for decades. We do want to warn you, this story has some disturbing details. In Jefferson City today, the House Committee on Children and Families met to discuss a bill that would allow oversight for unlicensed youth residential programs that have previously operated unchecked. KOMU 8's Rachel Barrett is in the newsroom with details.
I was at that hearing and heard emotional testimony from abuse survivors. Everyone was crying in the hearing room, including lawmakers, and those survivors say the same abuse that they experienced years ago is still happening today, all because of a legal loophole.
Knock her out.
The accusations allege years of abuse.
More importantly, I don't want another teenage boy or girl to have to go through what I went through.
Distilled down to a 5-minute testimony.
They will and still are abusing people and teenage boys.
They're begging lawmakers to make a change.
The biggest thing I want to see is regulation and oversight.
8 people from all across the country came to Jefferson City to testify. They say they suffered abuse in Missouri's so-called unlicensed residential facilities.
That has a kid that is struggling with drugs, mental illnesses, or anything, they can send their child to these.
Missouri is one of 2 states that does not regulate these organizations. No background checks, no oversight.
But I've also been heartbroken and angry about them repeatedly saying, this is something that has existed for decades, and we've tried repeatedly to reach out to legislators.
The bill still needs to be voted out of committee, and from there it will have a long journey to the governor's desk, where survivors hope it will become law. Advocates say these programs have been using a legal loophole, a religious exemption, even though some are not connected to churches at all. In the newsroom, Rachel Barrett, KOMU 8 News.
Failures in Missouri's welfare system led to the abuse of Missouri's most vulnerable children. KOMU 8's Rachel Barrett investigated a breakdown in systems that allowed faith-based youth homes to continue patterns of abuse.
I've seen staff members pick the kid up and slam him back on the ground.
After years of abuse.
Essentially, they would grab me by the collar or the arms or straight bear hug me and body slam me to the ground.
The House Committee on Children and Families unanimously voted yes on the bipartisan House Bill 557.
It has been voted to pass.
The bill passed will require youth homes to register in the state, force them to run background checks on employees, and allow government officials to inspect facilities and close them down.
Missouri is no longer going to be the safe haven for these type of vultures who want to come in and prey upon our kids.
But child advocates say it's not just a failure in law, but also a failure of Missouri's child welfare system. And that failure allowed children to be abused.
In my time, I have seen far too many failures. And so I do believe that it's systemic and that it needs to be addressed.
Stopping child abuse requires 3 different agencies to work together. The first is Social Services, which is under the governor behind me. Now, they take hotline calls and send out investigators to look into child abuse claims. But Social Services is completely powerless without the help of local law enforcement, who accompany the investigators and are the muscle behind making sure that these investigations are effective. Finally, the case moves to the courts, where a juvenile officer can remove a child and they can prosecute the case. Now, if any of these people don't work together perfectly, it creates an opening for children to fall through the cracks.
But I am comfortable in saying that these investigations require a multidisciplinary response between those 4 entities, and that didn't happen.
Schrag says he reached out multiple times for help while he was in one of these homes, but his complaints fell on deaf ears.
Then I ran away one time and told the cops, you're beating me, they're beating us. The cop didn't care. They cuffed me up, brought me right back to the school.
Advocates say the bill will take a step forward.
I absolutely believe that these bills would make substantive and meaningful change for children's safety in Missouri.
But institutional problems will keep holding children back.
Our system isn't where we need it to be.
In Jefferson City, Rachel Barrett, KOMU 8 News.
Witnesses say child abuse went unchecked for decades in Missouri. Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Spain. Thanks for joining us tonight. Today, the Attorney General announced charges against a Missouri couple who ran a boarding school up until 2020. They ran this boarding school where victims allege they were tortured. We do want to warn you, this story has some disturbing details. KOMU 8's Rachel Barrett is live in Jefferson City with more. Rachel?
This stack of paper contains 100 charges against Boyd and Stephanie Householder. For Boyd Householder, 80 charges. 52 of those related to child abuse and neglect, and 6 of them to statutory rape. Now, his wife, Stephanie Householder, was also charged 22 times, 10 of those for child abuse and neglect. And I spoke with their daughter today, and she says while she was surprised by the charges, there's still work to be done advocating for these victims.
I'm happy. This is what we have been fighting for.
Amanda Householder says while living with her parents at the Cedar County home, she witnessed the abuse of dozens of women at Circle of Hope Ranch. On March 9th, 2020, a year ago, she decided to speak out. She posted a video to social media meant to draw attention to the abuse at Circle of Hope.
That video, within the day of posting it, got 3,000 views. It's crazy because we've had way more views than 3,000 from that time to now. Like, we're being heard.
A year later, Householder says these charges give victims justice.
They were like thrilled. They never thought that this would happen.
The Attorney General detailed some of the abuse alleged against the Householders.
We believe this to be one of the most widespread cases of sexual, physical, and mental abuse patterns against young girls and women in Missouri history.
Accusations like the ones made against the couple are not unique. Other similar boarding schools face similar accusations of abuse. Agape Boarding School, also in Cedar County, is being investigated by Highway Patrol. Householder spent time there as a child while her parents worked for the school.
I don't feel like the form of justice that I need will ever happen. And that's because I was raised in multiple of these places. And in order for that to happen, I think every single one of those places will need to be shut down.
The couple is being held in Vernon County Jail. Now, a bill that's meant to put regulations on facilities like these is now working its way through the House. I talked to the bill sponsor today, and she said that she thinks these charges will help move that along. Live in Jefferson City, Rachel Barrett, KOMU 8 News.